Episode 12 featuring James Roberts on the 9 Point Start the Dream podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the 9 Point Start the Dream podcast. I'm your host, Jacoby Gillum. This episode we have James Roberts, the Paralympic athlete from the UK. So we go through James' journey from the early days and kind of the mindset and the frame that he kind of used to help him achieve his dreams as an athlete. Hope you enjoy, and here we go.
I grew up in a military background. My father was in the US Air Force, and my mother worked for NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So I've had that upbringing within the military, from the age of birth until I was about 19. So that's probably instilled the values of work ethic. It's probably one of the factors as to why I've gone into sport anyway. And it's kind of probably early days, and I think it's probably the same with you as a youngster. You have that aspiration of reaching the heights of becoming a professional athlete. I think it wasn't until I was probably my early teens I thought, well, having a disability, I wanted to be either play basketball or play soccer. Obviously, that's not physically possible with the disability. So I got to that age of thinking, well, what else could I do? And then disability sport kind of fell into my lap. It was one of my coaches on the base said to me, had you thought about doing disability sport? Cut a long story short, it kind of snowballed from there. I think initially that comment probably took me aback because I think I was about 15 and it was probably my way of challenging authority, thinking, hang on a minute, I can compete against able-bodied individuals within reason. Why would I want to? And I think because my disability, Jacoby, is not that visible, not that holding me back that much, I think at that age it's like, well, why would I want to? And I kind of look down on the Paralympics and maybe disabled people because you don't generally see a lot of people like that. So I think it was definitely a mindset. I definitely saw myself as able-bodied within reason. And it's I think when people ask me that question today, do you wish you were able-bodied? I say no, because it helped me propel me to probably what most kids have the aspiration of being sports stars. Okay, it's probably nigh on impossible, if not unrealistic goal to have at all. And I think I was talking to somebody on my show, I think it's under 1% that actually do make it. And I think that's in the US, and you should probably put it worldwide, it would be even smaller. So I'd say to people, I have been able to achieve my goals, but I did have at the back of my mind, and I think sport instilled me in that, you still have to do well in the classroom. And I'd say that to your listeners. It's like, and I push more people that are quite sporty now. If you are good at sport, because I think you've got that system in place in the US, utilize your sport to get yourself an education, and then you're set up for life then. So it's looking more that way. And it's more, I think my story is probably trying to inspire and probably giving people shortcuts as to, I had to learn along the way, but if I can give you a helping hand to probably go on my shoulders to not having to experience some of those fallbacks and whatnot, and kind of you don't have to go down the hard route if you don't have to learn from past generations, that the better, really.
Definitely, man. I think that's key. So what exactly is your disability, and when can you describe it for us?
The medical term for it, Jacoby, is femoral dysplasia, and the simplest way of explaining it is how I do it to some people that don't understand the medical stuff, jargon that goes with it. It's similar to an amputee. However, what I don't have, and see if I can get this right now, I don't have a femur bone, so the top half of the thigh. I've got a small tibia and small fibula, so the lower half of the leg. No knee joint. I've got a floating hip, so that basically means the socket itself is just floating around in muscle. So in essence, I have the bottom half of my leg attached to the hip.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to envision that, trying to see how it feels, but I don't know. Like, so when you're talking about playing sports, so how was that for you? Like,
I think when in terms of basketball and that, it would be basically in PE in school, and it was probably, I know it would be nigh only possible to maybe do games, but it's probably utilizing your skill set. Obviously, in a recreational standpoint, you could do that because you could play half court and things like that. But if you put that over into a competitive environment, obviously I wouldn't be able to succeed. So I think what my mother did when I was younger was try to find sports that I wouldn't be, so to speak, on a disadvantage and kind of being on equal footing. So it would be, what did I do when I was younger? I think the first sport I did was karate, but that was to probably instill the discipline, the respect, and things like that. I went on to do swimming later on when I was about 11, and that was kind of what springboarded my career, was that. And it was probably speaking to coaches, well, how can we use your advancement in your physical attributes? Obviously, not having two legs, I'm going to become more prominent in my upper body. So it was utilizing that. Well, okay, let's use that as a strength. So I started the butterfly stroke at that particular time, and being in the, what would it be, late 90s. A lot of swimmers in that environment weren't doing it at that age. So I was able to utilize my upper body as a strength, go into that, and kind of go from there. I was using a strength, and well, it's not the easiest stroke to get your head around because it's very technical. And I think because I was stronger upper body, I could kind of overcome that limitation.
so what helped you throughout all the years know that I'm going to be an athlete, despite what like anybody else thought about your limitations? What made you think like I'm going to make this happen?
I think it's twofold, Jacoby. I think it's that support network around you, be it family, friends, coaches. And then I think I had that desire and drive to, if anybody said, well, I don't think you can do this. This isn't, you're not, like that kind of negative wording. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to purposely go out there and prove you wrong. So I think I think it comes down to maybe the psyche, the mindset I had, and very much that drivenness to say, well, okay, you think this way, I'm going to do everything in my power to prove you wrong.
Definitely. So how does the process work to get to the elite level as a para athlete? So you're playing younger. How did you like progress that journey?
I'd say, well, there's an element of luck in there. I got into it basically because of that coach saying, well, why don't you try it? I spoke to our head coach. I was fortunate enough being overseas. He knew a coach of another team down the road, and they gave me his contact details. I got in touch with them. It would have been, I think, about 3 to 6 months later. I went down to their training session in the summer, and they thought I would be run of the mill. Did the training session. My mother was on the side with the team management, and it wasn't until I got back in the car after the practice, she said their eyes lit up once she saw the training. So it was kind of from there, it gave me the confidence to say, okay, this is possibly a reality to progress up to higher echelons of sport. Did I envision that I'd make a Paralympics? In all honesty, no. And it's just to seem that everything seemed to fall into place as my career progressed. So I think there's an element of luck. It's been in the right place. Obviously, you've got to be talented, as you know, and put all those three into it. And obviously, you've got to have that work ethic. And it was that drive. Okay, I want to not watch it on television. I want to experience it. Once I got a taste of one, okay, I want to compete at the next one. And it's I think now I'm a bit older, I think once I'd retired, I think that the early days of that, thinking, well, I'm still capable of this. I think that's where the frustration comes in, because you start demonizing yourself. It's like, well, I used to be able to do this. Why can't I do, I don't know what training, things I used to? Obviously, age is a factor. The amount of training you do is going to compact on that. So that frustration is like, well, I used to be able to do this. I can't now. But now, oh gosh, what are we now? 5 years removed from that decision, I can reflect on it and say, well, not many people have managed to go to one games, let alone two. And I think I was maybe so harsh on myself back then, because when you make it to the high levels, you have the aspiration where you want to go to the highest possible levels you can. So you want to win the event. Okay, I've got the realization now. It's not everybody can achieve that goal, because if it was that easy, obviously, as you know, everybody would be doing it, and it kind of demeans the actual event itself. So it's like, well, I've done this. There's not many people in my local area have achieved those feats. There are one or two, but those are obviously diamonds in the rough, so to speak. So you don't see everyday people. I think people come up to me and say, well, what you've achieved is quite remarkable. I'm probably very much humble. It's like, well, I don't like blowing my own trumpet. Yes, they're quite surprised. Oh, but we didn't know you'd done such and such. Because I think it's because an athlete lives in that moment, you kind of move from one time period from the same. It's the same with like when you went to college. That's a time frame in your life. Well, it's not going to impact on what I'm doing now, so to speak. It's kind of like I've done it. It's. I would say you would put it more like an achievement on your CV, and you move on. And so I think I surprise people like that. Well, why don't you talk about it? Okay, it's inspirational, but is it really going to impact on somebody's life? Possibly, but probably not, because it's my achievements, accomplishments. Is it going to help them succeed? If they took on some of the work ethics and the things that I do, yes, but the actual sporting context, probably not. So that's probably why I don't talk about it. But when people look to be humble and say, well, James has done such and such, I don't know, it can go two ways. Sometimes it's kind of overawes me, and I think you get quite embarrassed. It's like, I've not done anything really successful, like done something for charity or help somebody in need. And then sometimes it's like, well, yeah, I have actually done quite a lot in, well, what would be a, say, 15-year career. I've done quite a lot in my 30 years on the planet. So it's quite rewarding to hear, well, you're quite successful and you have done quite a lot in that short space of time. So it's kind of both ways. I think it depends day to day how I take it.
For sure. I think a lot of athletes, we're all kind of hard on ourselves, and we don't really see everything that we've done. People kind of around us are like, yo, you did X, Y, Z. And you're like, yeah, but I wanted to do so much more. And I think we kind of lose, I wouldn't say being gratitude, but just kind of just more of just perspective on the things that we have achieved. So I mean, like, I probably don't want to hear it, but like, you know, like you've done some dope things. Like you've done some things that people probably like dream of.
But would you not agree, Jacoby, but that we are looking at probably not say the flaws, but we look at more where we went wrong in a specific, I don't know, say for example, you in a game, you're going to look where you could have done better as opposed to what you did well. I think we're very much, I think it's a societal thing. We look at our negatives, it's easier to pinpoint those out, but I think from a sporting context, you're trying to iron those out impossible. So
Definitely.
In 2005 now, I'd just gone to university on, well, you couldn't say swimming scholarship, but I was based at that university because of swimming. with the national program, you've got to hit certain criteria each year to stay on the national program. So I think they dropped the event that I was on the national program for was breaststroke. I didn't hit the time criteria that we have to do, and subsequently was dropped. And I probably tell this story. I haven't told it in a while, but I thought this coming up to the Christmas period. I thought, well, I'm going to come back to university in January and be a student. I spoke to our performance director at Disability Sport Wales, and he knew of the situation, and he said to me, "What's your thoughts on doing rowing?" So I'm quite close with my mother anyway. So I rang her up once I'd finished this phone call. I've been on the phone to our performance director, and he said, "What are your thoughts about doing rowing?" And I think this comment my mum said to me always comes up. She said, "Well, you could be good at it or absolutely useless." So I said, "Well, I've got nothing to lose. Let's take a punt at it and see what happens." And went down to you could say, so to speak, a selection trial. I think it was about 2 months later after this phone call, and they were quite impressed. They said to me, "Don't worry about the World Championships coming up in the summer. Think about next year." And I, once got back in the car with the director, I said, No, I'm not doing that. I'm not waiting a year. I'm going to make sure I make that team," and obviously subsequently did. And the kind of the rest is history when rowing is concerned.
For sure. So when you were like, I'm going to compete that summer, you kind of learning a new sport, so how you kind of make that transition to compete at a higher level that summer?
I was probably fortunate enough it was in its infancy, the sport. So it's what are we now? That was 2006. The sport is almost unrecognizable in, well, we'll say 2017, because at 18 I've not seen it, but it has come a long way in a decade. So I was probably fortunate. I'm learning on the fly, so to speak. So I was fortunate to be coming from swimming, which is an aerobic sport as well. So it was just getting my head around the training, probably the mindset of the importance of strength and conditioning, which back in when I was swimming, it's like, well, I had this silly mindset that how is strength and conditioning going to help me in the swimming pool? Whereas I would say to any athlete now, it's a pretty naive way of thinking, because if you can get stronger and you have that technical components, it's going to put you in a better position, be it prevention of injury, you name it. Whereas I think I was maybe a little bit naive, thinking, well, why should I do this when I'm going to get the training components from the pool? Whereas I think it was probably compounded by I was doing a sports science degree, so I think you're learning how the physiology, biomechanics, and definitely the psychological elements help with sport at that time. So I think I was utilizing what I was learning in the lectures, in the labs, and implementing them in sport. So I think I was being able to accelerate probably my learning processes a lot quicker. And in all honesty, I had to change probably how I train, because going from a development stage, you're preparing for the future. Whereas now I'm in that performance state and being very much, well, okay, I have to deliver. So it's very much getting your head right around it. It's okay, I haven't got time to not learn, but develop. I've got to get the training done, get as strong as I can, get as fit as I can to be able to perform at, be it World Champs, Paralympics, straight away. And it's just definitely that mindset switch. Whereas if I happen to come out of retirement now, that's not a difficult mindset shift, so to speak, to do, because I've had to do it in the past. I know that environment firsthand, and you kind of, you so to speak, probably an analogy, duck to water. I know what I have to do it. So when people say, "Oh, I think it was in the lead up to Rio. So we're talking about, what was it, 6 years ago? People say, well, I was starting to have doubts about retirement because I just didn't want to put my body through that anymore. And people say, well, why do you want to do that? And these are, I think, what would it be? About 15, 16-year-old kids at high school. Well, you only see, I don't know if we use the analogy of the Olympics, 3 weeks of that person's career. I've lived the other 3.5 years in between. So I know the rigors of getting up at, if we use the example of when I went into volleyball, I had to practice at 6 a.m. every single day, bar the weekend. There's most people are not going to do that. And you had to do that. There's days like that, obviously, I didn't want to get up at that time. So it helps that you've got teammates to say, banging on your door, come on, it's time to get up and go to practice. So, and you've got to have that mindset. I think it does surprise people to hear that. Well, why do you do that? Well, I have that mindset sometimes, not now, but back then, that you kind of flip that switch. Well, if I don't do it and somebody else is, I've fallen behind them. So I've put myself on the back foot from the get-go. So I think that helps to have that kind of mindset. Well, you can kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of trick yourself mentally to, and I can't think of the actual word now, to probably perceive that a person is doing it and to make you do it, and possibly, say we use that in example of Christmas Day. Well, most athletes aren't going to train Christmas Day, but okay, you've got maybe the 1%, it might even be smaller than that do, and they probably use that mindset. Well, I'm going to perceive that the person that won't do it does to make me do it. So, and it's that, I think that's that 1% at that top level that we talk about, probably going to medals because of that kind of mindset.
That's dope. Yeah, that 1% mindset. So what was it like when you competed in your first World Championship?
First World Champs, it was lucky enough to be in the UK, so that was quite a good experience because you got friends and family. Obviously, there's no language barrier. There was no expectations to actually do anything, so the pressure is off. By the time it come round 2 years later and being the first Paralympics, it was the first games rowing that I competed in. So it was kind of those milestones. So it was, I think, within the media, what we would splurge out would be very much, what do we talk about? Just reaching the final and things like that. But internally within the team, it was, okay, the final is nice, but we want to go and medal. So it was that internal pressure. Okay, I think if I use probably how I actually felt. It was that element of excitement because it's like, well, I'm getting to the stage where I'm being able to realize a dream. I think when we were selected initially, I think it was about 100 days out before the Beijing Paralympics, people said, "Are you not excited?" And I think it comes back to, because my family is somewhat pessimistic, they think of the what if something could go wrong. I think I've still got that mindset. I think I said on that day, well, it's still 100 days to go. Anything can happen. Could get injured, you name it. So I think it wasn't until probably about maybe a week, maybe a bit less, that it actually dawned on me. It's like, okay, I'm going now. I can kind of feel happy about it and kind of enjoy the experience. And I think once the event actually rolled up, I think the heat, I was a bit nervous because you don't know what to expect. You don't know, have you done, well, I know what, I've done enough. I've done as much as I can. There's nothing I can do in terms of practice now. Everything's done. If it isn't enough, if the other teams are better, there's nothing you can, you have to wait for the result. Okay, we can kind of see now that we got some work to do. But then if we kind of roll forward and look to the final, and if I look at my rowing career, what would that be, about 5 years long, for that Paralympic final, I was the most relaxed I have ever been in my entire sporting career. And I do not know why. I don't know why I've been more stressed in events, be it in my teens, which in comparison are probably low levels and virtually no significance. Been more stressed in that than actually, well, for Paralympic sport is there is nothing higher, and I've been stressed after in other events since. So you're thinking, well, I don't know if it's because it was that outside perspective. Okay, I've reached the final now. From an outside perspective, I've achieved what I said I would do. Now I've got nothing to lose. But then you're thinking on the flip side of that, internally we said we wanted to medal. So I'm thinking, well, I probably look at it from this way, Jacoby. I think maybe subconsciously, once you make the final, like, as you know, with any sporting event, say track, things like that, anything can happen once you make the final. You have an outside chance being in the one of those 6 people. So I think it's maybe because of that I was so relaxed. It's like, well, if everything fits into place, yes, I could medal. Okay, there is also that chance that I wouldn't. Okay, that was the case. But I think because you've got all those what if scenarios, if everything did go to plan, that could do. Yes, you could medal, and I think maybe that's why I was so relaxed.
Awesome. That's great. For anyone listening right now that, a para athlete, or able-bodied athlete, athlete in general, what would be like your advice just based on your journey? Like, what would be your advice to give them on just how to navigate it, or just how to like maybe just keep overcoming obstacles or whatever it may be?
I think you're gonna have adversity and obstacles in your way in anything in life. It's probably, I think maybe athletes less so willing to take, not willing to. I think they are less so than the general public to maybe shy away from it. Whereas I think an athlete will, to some degree, want to take a challenge head on. They want to, so to speak, if we use the analogy, they'd rather go through a brick wall than go around it or over it. So I think if you've got a challenge, you've got nothing to lose, and it's to take it on and to, you never know where you're going to be. If I say to myself, oh gosh, me as an early teen, look where I got to in my 20s. It is, if you put in the work, let luck take the course to some degree and be in the right place. If you have that mindset to achieve, it's probably reflecting on, well, as you say, it's looking at what your greatness is. Okay, I think as an athlete, you're gonna, well, this is my bar here. I've reached it. I'm gonna now move it. So it's looking to set those little goals and probably look to tick them off as you go along. And it's probably, I think maybe we look at the result, but I think we're maybe a proportion of the popularity of the population. We do look at probably ticking off those processes in between to get to our results. Maybe not wholeheartedly looking at, I don't know, a calendar on the wall and ticking them off day by day, but I think subconsciously, okay, I've achieved this today, I've achieved that tomorrow, and so on, to get to, I don't know, making a D1 school and whatnot. And obviously you're going to get to that goal of yours.
I like it. Like, embrace the journey. Like have those end goals, but know the process that you go through to get there makes it so much sweeter once you get there, right?
I would say that. I would say probably you could add to that. It's not forgetting about the enjoyment. It's remembering why you took up the sport in the first place, and keeping that at the back of the mind as you progress up. Because once you lose that joy of doing something that you probably take for granted when you're younger, that's probably the time to say, well, that's enough. I've time to call it quits on the career, because once you start loathing something, you're not going to want to do it. So it's probably not forgetting that enjoyment factor.
Definitely. Love it, man. Love it, James. So I've kind of worked on wrapping up a little bit. Where can people kind of find more about you and what you're working on? Social media, websites, anything?
Well, social media, Twitter. Do you want my handle?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, handle away, and I'll leave some links at the bottom of
My
this.
Twitter handle is James O Robert 11. Uh, well, Facebook as well, but that's probably more difficult. But the probably easiest one in social media would probably be Twitter. I've got links to my website up through Twitter, or it would be, what is it? The website is Fit Amputee, so it's all one word, .co.uk. And obviously, I've got personal training business on that, and obviously, that involves obviously what I had to go through a little bit, I think, story-wise, that we didn't go into depth in. And then also, I think I talk about in a few articles, probably the mindset of the athlete and whatnot, and probably my own experiences of how I've had to deal with things as well.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having you on, James. Thank you for coming on, talking with me about them, and sharing more of your story.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jacoby, and thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the 9 Point Starter with a Dream podcast. I was your host, Jacoby Gillum. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can check out more about what we're doing with 9 Point at 9point.com. Till the next episode, talk to you soon.